proofs. The rain used to absolutely throw it down, you know, team down. And when I got back this particular night, it was the last night of the scheme, that was what it was, and I got back to the barracks in Amanaga, and the platoon sergeant said to me, "Have you seen Glover on your way around?" So I said no. So another fellow arrived, a Geordie named Matt Cowan, and he asked him if he'd seen him. He said, "Have you seen Glover?" He said, he's not turned up. So he said he hadn't seen him anywhere. And he must have been asking around the platoon, you see, where Glover was, because most of us had not been far from each other or would come across each other. So when Cowan said he hadn't seen him either, it seems that nobody had seen Glover for quite a while. So the sergeant said to me and the Geordie, Matt Cowan, "You better both go back and see if you can find him." Well, that was a bit of a job really, because it was still hammering it down outside, and we got on our bikes, and I remember thinking how futile this was. You know, you got a job to see at times. The rain was that heavy, and the roads were muddy. You know, they weren't made up roads. They were hard most of the way, but you came across these patches where you had to watch it, puddles and bloody mud and that. And I remember thinking how futile this was, and I was cursing this bugger again. I thought, bloody Glover, of all people, it bound to be bloody Glover. Anyway, we went back for miles, and we came to a track we'd gone down off the main road. As I say, the main road was little more than a track. And we carried on back down there to where we'd camped the night before, and there was still no bloody signs of this Glover. So I forget what happened now. We must have stopped the bikes. We stopped the engines, probably to look around. And when we came to start the bikes again, of course we couldn't start them because the rain had slashed in onto the contact breaker points and onto the magnetos, you know, and you just couldn't start them. We tried. We both had handkerchiefs and perhaps bits of rags and that, and we took the covers off the mag. And that was what I should tell you. Well, we got his started. We got Cowan, the Geordie's bike, started, and he left it ticking over while he came to help me to start mine, but I couldn't get it started at all, and neither could he. And the rain, when we took the cover off, the little round cover off the contact breaker box, as fast as we dried it out, the rain was in there again. You can't imagine, you know, it was really slashing down. You didn't have a chance to withdraw your hands, and it was wet through again. And of course our hankies were wet through then. We got nothing dry to dry it out with. It was absolutely hopeless bloody situation, and we kicked until we were exhausted trying to start this bloody motorbike. Anyway, we both decided that it was futile, and that the only thing to do was to wait till morning, when there was a chance of somebody else passing, you see, because it had been a big scheme we were on. There was quite a lot of troops and vehicles and whatnot around, and although not in that particular spot where we were, and so we decided to camp for the night. Well, all we had were our ground sheets. And army ground sheets aren't much bloody use at all. They've been in use since, I think, about the Boer War, but they're bloody useless. They've never altered the style of them at all. They were just long enough. They were about 6 feet long by maybe 2 feet or 2'6" wide. I don't think they were 2'6", about 2'3". And they had eyelet holes all the way down the side of them, so you could use them as a double-purpose thing. You could lace your pull through or a bit of rope through and make a bed out of them. Maybe you had a frame, you know, like in the jungle when you could make up a bamboo frame, and you could lace your ground sheet round it through these eyelets, and make a bed out of it. And that's what I'm saying. They weren't a proper good thing at all, really, for any purpose. They were a sort of a compromise, which was neither here nor there. But that's all we had, the two. So we laced the two together with our pull-throughs. That is the piece of rope you use for cleaning your rifle barrel through. And And we put the two motorbikes a couple of feet apart. That's all we could afford, really. And we made a tent with the ground sheets on the top, and we both tried to get down on the grass between these two bikes, and that's how we spent the night. And it was a bloody uncomfortable night, I'll tell you. I had the footrest of one of the bikes sticking in me behind all bloody night. I remember that distinctly, and every time I tried to turn over, this bloody footrest was in the way. And they weren't folding footrests like they've got today. You couldn't get shut of the bloody thing, it was there to stay. Anyway, that's the way we spent the night. So the next morning, it didn't rain all the time during the monsoon. You got these breaks, and you might get a break of a good, clear, sunny day. Well, the next morning, a breeze came up, and it was quite bright and fine. And we managed to get the bike started, my bike started. So we set off again, back for the barracks. We thought, well, bugger it, we don't know where he is, nobody else knows, so we've had enough sort of thing, so we'll make our way back, and we'll have to report that there's no sign of him. Anyway, we got back, and one of the first blokes we met was bloody Glover. And he was large as life, dry as a bloody bone, you know, probably had a bloody good meal, and wanted to know what all the fuss was about. Well, that's the sort of clown I'm telling you about. Well, the next incident I remember involving Glover was at Kohima. And I'll just go back a little on this, because what happened was the Lance Corporal, who was also with us by then, he was in the carrier platoon, but we were all together at Kohima in a rifle company, because they say the vehicles were useless. You couldn't use them. Glover had been in Hornsey's section. Well, Hornsey, the Cockney Lance Corporal, was now a full corporal. He was made up to corporal. And he was that fed up with Glover in his section that he came to me one day. Oh, and I'd been made up to Lance Corporal by that time. And he came to me one day and he said, look, he said, how about taking this clown for a couple of weeks, because he's driving me balmy. And I was reluctant to take him. I didn't want to take him at all. And I said, oh no, bugger that, George. I said, I've had enough of him without having him in the section, you know. So he, you know, more or less insisted. He said, well, it's not fair, you know, it's you know, we should really share him out, and when you've had enough of him, palm him off on some other bugger. So I agreed to take him. So he joined my section as a Bren gunner. Daft thing, really, but he was being a Bren gunner, you see, in the section he was in. So what happened was they swapped Bren gunners, and I cut for him. Well, one day, it was still monsoon weather, at Kohima on a hill known as GPT Ridge. The hillside was very rocky. You could see the boulders sticking up out of the ground, you know, and you had to look around for a place to dig, because you dug so far down and you came to rock. You couldn't get a full trench dug, sort of thing. So I was paired off with Glover. That was the thing I didn't mention to you. I don't know why I was paired off with Glover now, why I didn't have somebody else, whether it was my choice or what. Can't remember. Anyway, I was paired off with him because there were two men to a trench. The trenches were known as slit trenches because they only, not like the First World War when there were long lines of trenches. The trench was only about 6 feet long, and there was usually two men to a trench. Well, I was looking around for a place to dig, and I found a spot, and decided to dig in there. So I said to Glover, come on George, let's get digging. And an argument started right away, because Glover had also been looking around and he picked his spot, you see. And he was that sort of a fella that he was insisting on, he was saying that the spot he'd picked was better than the spot I'd picked. And really, he should have had no say in the matter, because I was a Lance Corporal and he was a Fusilier. But under those conditions, there wasn't much you could do really, apart from getting violent if it had prompted one or started a bloody fight. there was nothing much you could do, and even then with a fellow like Glover, he would have fought on, you know what I mean, he wouldn't have given up easily. He was stubborn. Not only stubborn, he went bloody stupid as well. Anyway, to make things easier, I gave way. I said, all right, George. And I was still convinced that the spot I'd picked was better bloody spot than the spot he picked, but to save a bloody argument and wanting to get on with the job, I said, okay, George, come on, let's dig in. So we started to dig. Well, only a few inches underneath the ground where he started to dig, we came across the top of a boulder. It just looked like a small rock. But they were all over the place, as I say. Some of this ground was very rocky. There were rocks on top of the ground and underneath the ground, all over the bloody show, you know. And the further down we got, the wider this rock went, you know. It was like a bloody rounded pyramid. And the deeper we went, the wider it bloody went. So when we got down about a couple of feet, a water party passed from, we were in A company, and a party from B company was passing, going for water. There was a constant search that, looking for bloody water, and you could tell them because they all had these water bags on the bamboo pole, the water bottles and whatnot. So Glover shouted them across. There was a corporal in charge of him, and he said, will you give us a lift here to throw this rock out of the trench, you see? So 2 or 3 of these blokes got round one side, and I knew it was futile before he bloody started. And I stood up and bloody watched them. And Glover tried to get round one side of it, and they had a couple of blokes on the other side, and they were trying to lift this rock out, and they all laughed because they knew, like I did, it was bloody futile, it was hopeless. The deeper down you went, the wider the rock became. Anyway, the outcome of that little bloody incident was that instead of the trench being 6 feet long, it was bloody near 16 feet long, because we both had to have a sleeping compartment. Normally, you see, you dug behind that into a dugout and then covered it over with branches and that. Well, that was impossible because this bloody rock was in the way. So it finished up with me being one side of the bloody rock and him being the other side. On that same hill, not long afterwards, the weather cleared up. It was at that particular time it was still chucking it down, you know. And the weather cleared up, and I remember it was a nice sunny afternoon, and Glover, the Bren gunner, was supposed to be on. Well, they used to take turns on the gun. It just so happened by coincidence that he was doing his 2-hour guard duty on his own gun. And I left the position for some reason. I'd gone further down the track, and an officer came up to me and he said, are you in charge of this section? I said, yes, sir. He said, well, what's the bloody idea? He said, who's your lookout man? So I indicated, like, told him, thinking that George was in his trench with his bloody Bren gun. I said, there's a man up on the top there, sir. He said, yes. He said he's on the top of his dugout reading a bloody newspaper. And I couldn't believe it. I went up the bloody hill, and there's George sprawled out on the top of the, not in his pit. He was sprawled out on top of the dugout, on the top of the branches and that, reading this SEAC newspaper, which they issue from time to time. It used to come up with the rations. SEAC stood for South East Asia Command. And he's the same again, you see, by and large his bloody life. Reading the paper, I got it in the bloody neck. And what could I do? All I could do was tell him off, but it was like talking to a bloody brick wall. No, I'm trying to illustrate what sort of bloody idiot you come across. And the next incident I remember with George was when we were supporting B Company. B Company had attacked a hill known as Arajura Spur, and they were using barbed wire. It was going to be a long job. They couldn't take the hill. Somebody else had tried before them. I think it was the Royal Scots. And we were carrying barbed wire up for B Company because they must have decided to dig in. Instead of coming all the way back down the hill, they must have decided to dig in overnight and put the barbed wire out, and then perhaps have another go in the morning, you see, to try and shift the Japs off this bloody hill. Well, George and I and a few more blokes had made 2 or 3 trips up the hill with these rolls of barbed wire. And we were handing over at the top to one of the sergeants in B Company, and he came under some bushes, like rhododendron trees. They were like hollow in the middle, you know, and he was taking them off us, and a couple of blokes were taking the wire to where they wanted it. Well, on about the 3rd trip up the bloody hill, we got to the top and there was nobody there. There was no sign of the sergeant. There was nobody there at all. And so I got a bit anxious, really, you know, knowing because the Japanese weren't far away. They were only, you know, maybe 100 yards, a couple of 100 yards further on. And I was anxious to get out of the bloody place then, when there was nobody to hand the wire over to. I thought, well, sorry, we haven't got around here long enough, let's get out of it. But on the way back down the hill, we passed these about half a dozen dead blokes who'd been killed in an earlier attack. They weren't our fellas, I think they were all Scots. And they were like, I thought at first they were Africans because they were bloated, and they'd probably been lying there for a couple of days in the sun and out in the climate like that, you know. It soon bodies soon start to rot. Well, these had swelled, and the uniforms were bloated in the uniforms. I remember the sight of them. Well, you can imagine that sort of thing. Well, on the way down, George stops there, and he's going round from one to the other, picking rifles up and putting them down again, you know. And I was getting more irritable because I wanted to be out of it. And I said, what the bloody hell's going on, George? He said, I'm looking for a rifle with better woodwork than mine. You couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe it. Well, you see, in barracks, you're on inspections every morning. And you have a rifle inspection, of course. And the thing was then, have you ever had a rifle issued? Have you got your rifle changed? The thing was to ask the storeman for one with decent woodwork, because some rifles might look all the same to you, but some were lighter than others. Some had lighter woodwork. The woodwork alone looked dirty, looked like a dirty, dull grey. But they never looked as smart or as clean, you see.